With the next Transformers film being set in a Cybertron that has yet been ravaged by war, Hasbro seems to be getting the masses ready by making new figures based on past iterations of what the robots in disguise looked like before they were in disguise. First, we got the entire Siege toy line for a year, then the buzzworthy Origin figures, and these convention exclusive sets based on episodes of the original cartoon, and of course, the Studio series, expanding into the High Moon video games. It's pretty clear what they are doing, and we just had to get one more set in there with this year's Amazon exclusive subline based on both of the timelines from IDW Comics. And I wanted to take a look at how these guys made the transition from the page to plastic. Except for Nacelle. I didn't bother getting him. Don't get me wrong, the Siege Seeker mold is a toy that I love, 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 but I just didn't have a reason to want this character in my collection. Plus, it seems that the factory has been planting fungus in his wings, and I don't want to deal with that. So, moving on to the moldless figures. Much like how the comics themselves started with Megatron Origins, this line starts with the Rise of Tyranny 2-pack, showing us the Emperor of Destruction himself, Megatron, back in his days of the Energon Mine, and Ratbat, back before he was punished by being rebuilt into one of Soundwave's tapes. This Megatron is retooled from the Siege one that we've had like 10 times now, and a lot of people are getting sick of it. And it's true that this mold could use a rest, but I still think this may be its best version. The mold kind of fits the drill tank more than a tank, in my opinion. And the gunmetal gray with the yellow and black hazard stripes is a cool combination of colors that we don't see on other TFs. The robot mode is absolutely outstanding to look at. I know the more middle-aged fans won't like hearing this, but G1 Megatron is just a boring design, and the modifications made for this minor look just give him the personality that he was lacking. The head sculpt is fantastic, bringing that Alex Mill art to life up on our toy shelves. That said, given all the new tooling this Megs has, I'm kinda shocked that he has a new head, given that they made an Origin Megatron one already. Yeah, back when the mold first came out, they did this Combat Hero redeco of it, and that had a minor Megatron head. I know it's hard to see the details through the paint, but these are two sculpts based on the same comic. The only reason I can think why they would do this is because the design team for Transformers has changed between these two releases, and they wanted this new Megatron to have more of their era in it than the old guards. Still a great noggin regardless. You can also place that drill on his arm in place of his normal cannon, so he can do some mining with Impactor. And he has this nice pickaxe with the pink blades, to also mine, but it can also be his weapon for when he first enters the gladiator pits. All in all, he's a Megatron like no other, and a great one to get if you're a fan of the good old bucket head. Now then, Senator Ratbat. This is an interesting one. I don't get why Ratbat keeps getting reinterpreted as a normal Transformer that was torn apart and rebuilt as a cassette tape. But this is the third time now. It happened in Dreamwave, then in the Universe toy line, then in IDW. And this is the second time we got a toy of the IDW one. And they're both repaints of Scourge. This is using the Studio Series 86 version of Scourge, which I didn't like when I first got it, but I have come around to it. Even if the arms feel too long, and they do, it is a good take on Galvatron's number 2, and maybe even a better version of Mr. Mixtape right here. The big purple spaceboat thing is looking really regal. The middle thruster is missing because of that being on the head of Scourge, and Ratbat never has that, so it's gone here. Instead, he has that flashy gold Senate logo, just to make sure everybody knows his status. The robot mode is very beautiful in the purple and black, contrasting Scourge's colors in every way. Unlike Megatron, he doesn't have too many new parts to differentiate him. Only a new chest that has that big gold necklace showing off another Senate logo, because this guy is too proud of his position. His head is interesting. His helmet really invokes the idea that he will be trapped in a bat's body in the future. It also seems to maybe take inspiration from the Dreamwave version of the character. And if not, then it's an interesting coincidence. His face is something I'm not really into. It's not ugly, but what is his expression? This guy should have some kind of sassy smirk to invoke his arrogance, and instead he's got this quivering lips, sad eyes look, like his whole world is falling apart. Which it did in the book, but who wants that to be the way his toy depicts him? I do like this take on him for my first Rat-Bat figure, but he just lacks some things that allow his future leader to be the better of the two in this set, for me anyway. To balance out these two, we also have the Humble Origins 2-pack, giving us the IDW Universe's versions of Orion Pax and Senator Shockwave. Yes, this Ultra Magnus-looking retool of the Siege Starscream is a Shockwave figure. His backstory in IDW was complicated, so I'm not explaining it here. Read it yourself if you're interested. I could simply sum him up and just say, the Siege Seekers were great, and he's great. But let's at least go over what he does different from his many tooling brothers. The Tetrajet is back again, in this nice bright shade of blue. But now, the wings have been swapped out for these giant thrusters, and he has these tiny little wings in place of the guns. I look at this thing and think, it must be really fast, but the worst at turning. After every version of this jet being the same, it's interesting to see things mixed up this time. The robot mode is equally stunning. Really, my only problem with it is the painted thighs. I know it's because they're game molded to the lower legs. Red Wing had to do this too, but at least his wasn't scratching off as much. The head sculpt is very nice looking. The bulging chest make him feel almost more like a bodybuilder than a politician. The thrusters are up on his back, and it's fun to imagine him floating around on them, or fold them up and have him boosting forward. Those little wings are on his elbows, and to be comic accurate, they should be pointed back, but I prefer to keep them spread out. You could also have him hold them like some kind of hook blades, but I prefer to just have him debating with Rat-Bat and Crosscut. Now let's look at Baby Optimus Prime. This time done with a remold of the Siege Hound, to give us an IDW version of Orion Pax. He's the same truck, Jeep, sci-fi thing as his predecessor, and this time because it needs to be a three-tone character instead of a two-tone one, he has all this red paint on his front hood, and I worry about it peeling off at some point. Even with those fears, it is a nice-looking alt mode. The robot mode is nice, really has the feel of a younger Optimus here. He may not be as bulky as the other versions, but I'm sure Ariel still shows him off whenever she can. This mold looks really good in the red, gray, and blue. The head really makes him feel like he's still trying to figure out his place in things, and the rest of the retooling really makes him his own. He still has the larger of Hound's two guns, and the drum that goes on it. For Orion, I like to put that part on the back to make it look more like the Ion Blaster. He also has the axe that we love to see him with, and this is a unique version, with a more jagged-shaped blade, and a handguard. That's a fun detail. He's the one I probably have the least to say about, but I still think he's a pretty fun Baby Prime. He's sure better than the last version we got. Now here we go, the leader class of the collection, and for most people, the star of the show. The first ever true figure of the IDW original villain, Nova Prime. This big boy has finally been brought to life using the Siege Galaxy Upgrade Optimus Prime mold that is based on the version of the character from the Cybertron series. A lot of people wanted the original to be repainted into Nova Prime, and now we've seen it happen with the new one here. This double-cannoned big rig is supposed to be a fire truck for Optimus, but there is no way that Nova is anything other than a 10-wheeled piece of heavy artillery. It's just as cool as a truck mode as it has always been, just in some new colors, and his new wings do seem to drag on the ground a bit, which is upsetting. Just like the Optimus, this figure has a smaller core robot that can be armored up, and for Nova, it's the least interesting thing about the figure. When we first got the Optimus, some people I'm sure thought it was weird to have a G1 looking Prime with the Cybertron truck on his chest, but I loved that, because it makes me feel like we got an upgraded version of the old Burger King toy that was basically the same thing. Nova's core robot is just a white Optimus. It's like that one we got back in Combiner Wars, except that was supposed to be Optimus, and it had a new head. Nothing about this core robot feels like Nova Prime at all, and it just seems to be a holdover of the original toy. Normally, I like to see this with Ultra Magnus in the Combiner Wars toy, but as a Nova Prime toy, this doesn't work for me. Before we look at the big robot, I do want to say that pulling the leg armor off of the trailer build is kind of hard for him, and I do worry about breaking this tab at some point. The final robot is wonderful to see. Nova was based on concept art for a Super Optimus toy we never got, and people have always seen similarities between him and Cybertron Prime. That's why we have this toy. But he also has this kind of big convoy-like head, and a War Within style chest. Intentional or not, he really is like a fusion of different Optimuses, with a giant set of fallen angel wings. He has these two rifles that I really don't care for, and just keep mounted on the legs for extra detail. After all, why use those when he has these things? I think we're all happy to finally see Nova Prime in toy form, and even if you aren't, this figure means that Hasbro has him in their trademark library now. That means we will likely see him again in a few years. Heck, he may be a villain for a future movie at some point. We may not know where the Transformers will go next, but it seems like Nova Prime will be a part of it. As incredible and beloved as the over a decade of books from the first IDW universe were, the reboot they did for their last 3 years was very disappointing, to say the least. But despite all of the bad things, one of the few parts I like was the character of Javelin, one of Prime's main squad of bots who was a sniper and had her head shattered, then rebuilt, which is why it looks like that, and managed to always be interesting, despite never getting to do more than be a background character. Oh, and Cascade, who I don't even remember being in the books. Apparently she was the one who headshot Javelin. Whatever, the point is we have the two of them here in the Deadeye Duel 2-pack. Alright, so Cascade. She's a repaint of the Siege Chromia with a new head and an extra attachment to turn the modular pistol into a sniper rifle. She even still has those lame grenades that she can't even hold. Honestly, I would say Cascade is the best version of this mold. The Chromia is a great take on her old cartoon look, but I'd rather just pick up her frilling Furdy figure instead. And I didn't even buy the Nightbird version, and I love Nightbird as a character, so she was a hard one to pass. Because this is Cascade's first toy, it lets the quality of the toy stand out. I don't know if these pastel colors really scream Decepticon, but if Starscream were in any other robot series, he'd be the main hero based on colors alone, so who cares? Really, the coolest part of this toy is that she's a female Decepticon. We've been getting so many fembots lately, but most of them have been Autobots, and it's nice to have another bad girl for our TF universes. Alright, and finally, my favorite figure of this whole subline, Javelin. This purple, pink, and gray lady that hangs out with Sunstreaker and Point Blank. Like I said, she is one of the few things I enjoyed from the 3-year run of comics, so I was super happy that she was getting a figure. That said, if you compare her to her actual comic design, she was a bit taller, nowhere near as curvy, and not this thick. Personally, I like the toy look better. This is of course because she is reusing the mold of the Bumblebee movie version of RC, and man, we haven't really had cross-pollination between movie and non-movie stuff in a while, and I'm down with having it back. I loved this RC, and I love Javelin even more. I do think she definitely wears the vehicle mode better than RC did. Her gun is also modular for some reason, because it can't be done up in another way, and does look kind of funny to me. Much like Cascade, her colors, as nice as they look, make it seem like she's on the wrong team, but I'm cool with having a purple Autobot in the ranks. This 2-pack is really fun, and these ladies are the ones worth getting if you only want one item from this set. They really add the most to your world, in my opinion. Overall, this is a pretty cool set of figures that was a great choice for an exclusive theme, regardless of it being made out of brand synergy or not. If there is anything in this set you want, you should try and add it. Except for that nacelle, apparently.